Studies and disaster risk management. Dr. Azizan also has a 10 years experience as an engineer and more than 15 years experience of being a lecturer, and also has a lot of research on occupational safety. Dr. Azizan is also dedicated to advancing research and practical solutions for occupational safety and health. Dr. Azizan, so ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Azizan as he shares insights on the influence of mental health in creating a holistic safety culture. And Dr. Azizan, you have 15 minutes to present your presentation, is also dedicated to advancing research and the time is yours. Solution for occupational safety and health.
Thank you very
So
much,
ladies and
Miss
gentlemen,
Jihan.
please welcome Dr.
Assalamualaikum
Azizan
warahmatullahi
as he
wabarakatuh.
shares more than 15 years on the influence
And
of
good
mental
afternoon to all of
lecture.
you. Rabbi Jasir wa ta'asir wa tamim bukhari. I want to ask an assistant from Miss Jihan to project my material, please.
Okay. Okay, I think there's a human error, a little bit human error here. So, Dr. Azizan, can you share the presentations? We already opened the access to share screen.
But I need to see I need to see, nothing appear on my screen actually.
Okay, so would you like the committee to share the screen?
Yeah, sure, surely.
Okay. So please, the committee, get ready for a share screen for Mr. Azizan presentation. All right,
Is it
Doctor.
okay?
Yeah, there is a technical problem, a little bit technical problem. So maybe we could use this time for a chit chat. So, Dr. Azizan, how
Okay.
are you today?
Okay. Anyway, so my talk is really more on, how do we relate the safety culture and then the mental health.
Mhm.
Actually, I have prepared quite a numbers of slides to be shared with all the participants or all the audience. And then anyway, if you cannot share my material, I will try to share mine. Is it okay?
Ah, this is okay.
Okay,
Your
okay, it's coming.
yeah,
Okay, now it's coming.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you share the screen, right?
Hold on. Oh, sorry for the mistake. Okay. Okay, sure. So the topic that given to me is with regard to the influence of mental health in creating a holistic safety culture. So next, please. The next slide, please. Okay. So before we start, let's be honest. I believe that all of us have one simple goal at the end of today's, either to go home safely or, be safe at our workplace. So no one wake up in the morning, thinking, maybe I will get injured today. Of course not, but accident can still happen. So that's why we are here actually to share, something with regard to how do we manage ourselves or how do we control, the hazard. So keeping everyone safe and healthy isn't just the job of one person or one department or one group of people. It takes effort from everyone actually. Start from employees, employers, even the government. So we need working hand in hand, to be honest. Okay. And it is not only about following the rules or saving money for the company. It is really about saving life. So I'm talking about the humanitarian efforts that show we are care for one another. So that's why I start my presentation with this slide. Thinking about from the religious point of view. So I do believe that all the sacred texts remind us about the importance of preserving human life. So when we talk about safety, we are not just talking about procedures or not just talking about checklists, we are talking about values. We are talking about compassion. We are talking about responsibility of each of us. We are talking about the responsibility of the employees, the responsibility of the employers, and the responsibility of the government. So let's explore how safety culture can bring all these elements together and hopefully, keep everybody safe, happy, and still smiling. But by the end of my session. Next, please. Next slide, please. So I begin with, the storytelling about the case history that ever occurred in modern histories. So this case study is about Bhopal disaster. I think every one of us are in the know about this incident. Okay. Sorry, not Bob. Yes, Bhopal. Bhopal. Yes, Bhopal. Sorry. Okay. So this incident, involved the release of. This is just a recap about this incident. This is about the release of approximately 45 tons of MIC or methyl isocyanate from the pesticide plant. This pesticide plant actually owned by Union Carbide India Limited, or in short, we call it UCIL. Okay, and he has given a very tremendous impact to the surrounding, whereby the gas spread over nearby densely populated areas, and then it already been recorded that thousands died instantly, and it caused massive panic as residents fled here and there. And then, according to the latest uh, report, estimated around 15 to 20 deaths toll, and around 500,000 suffered from respiratory issue, and also they face a lot of other diseases with regard to eye irritation and then other illnesses. And then when it's come into compensation, actually this event or this tragedy is very unique. Okay, because it involves political intervention. Okay, and then in terms of compensation, many survivors receive only a few $100, and they have lost a lot. Their family members, their properties, so on and so forth. And from the incident, according to the investigation report, the main key causes of this incident is actually due to poor safety protocols, whereby we are talking about inadequate system, non-functioning refrigeration unit, and of course it's also related with human errors. They want to discuss further. Okay, for example, lack of emergency training, and then lack of response procedures, and in terms of corporate responsibility. So we identified that the report also encountered there was a corporate negligence whereby the Union Carbide failed to upgrade safety system, and then they ignore the warnings. So from the disaster, when we talk from the point of view of the weak safety culture, so it's crystal clear, we have the problem of poor maintenance and safety procedures. And at the same time, we have the issue of inadequate training and emergency preparedness. And of course, due to cost cutting, because the company start to cost cutting, whereby they prioritize this over safety. And then of course we cannot we cannot ignore the issue of lack of accountability from the management. And then because of this incident, the side the I mean the survivors face mental health impact. Okay, they suffered long-term trauma and grief, and then they also some of them feel anxiety, depression, and fear of chemical exposure until now. Okay, and then most important thing, there are also loss of trust in authorities and companies. Okay, and then we also encounter that minimal post-disaster psychological support being provided to the survivors. So the key points here actually, when we try to relate it with safety culture, the strong safety culture must value human life and transparency, and mental health recovery as part of the what we call it, post-crisis management. So next, please. Okay, again, we try to discuss about Seveso disaster and then the lesson learned from the disaster. Okay, so Seveso disaster occurred in 1976, and then it's occurred in one small company, IC Mesa. This IC Mesa actually, the chemical plant, and then it's located about 20 kilometers north of Milan, Italy. And what actually happened here? The incident was due to the reactor rupture and then release of the dioxin or TCWD. Okay, so everybody know, dioxin is highly carcinogenic compounds, and then this really actually lasted over 20 minutes, and then it's spreading over Seveso town with a population of, if I'm not mistaken, around 20,000 people. Okay, fortunately, this incident not direct human death reported. There is no direct human death reported, but it exposed to thousands of people, thousands of population to toxic gas. And then most of the victims or survivor, suffered what so-called the chronic knee, a kind of skin disease. And then it's been reported that approximately 26 pregnant women had abortion due to exposure to dioxin. And then the lesson learned from here, actually, we are talking about the lack of safety regulation enforcement. Okay, and then ineffective of emergency response in chemical industry. Okay, and of course, it's related back to the issue of safety culture. You know, because if you refer back to the classic theory of of the accident causation, so we can come into consensus that most of the emergencies, whether it is regardless whether it is small or big scale incidents or or small or big scale accidents, normally is caused by human error. Okay, and then the theory also said more than 80% of the accident actually due to human error. So human error here, we can relate it to the issue of safety culture itself. Safety culture is about the attitudes and then how the individual thinks, and the attitudes and how the groups think. Okay. So next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, Tianjin Port. This occurred in 2015. And then just to share with you the information. Okay, this is considered as a world largest non-nuclear explosion that caused around 170 deaths, and most of the death toll were the firefighters. More than 100 firefighters dead because of this incident. Okay, and then it's also reported that more than 17,000 homes damaged, and then the toxic chemicals such as sodium cyanide disperse here and there, and then start to contaminate the water. Okay, and then it also reported that residents within 3 kilometers being evacuated due to toxic risk. And then according to the latest report issued by the port authority, the root cause of the incident actually due to the improper storage of nitrocellulose that lead to the spontaneous combustion, And then the fire also ignited, the ammonium nitrate, whereby it's caused the two massive explosion. And other type of chemicals nearby worsen the detonation and contamination. So, you know, again, this incident actually closely related to the issue of attitudes, the issue of human error, and the issue of safety culture. And as we know, all of the incident actually expose, the survivor to mental health. I'm talking about the post-crisis, symptom. Okay, so most of the survival, face trauma, face anxiety, and some of them emotional stress, from the death of their family members, so on and so forth. Okay, next, please. I'm going to go very quickly. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, the same goes to Beirut explosion. So very similar case. And then we're still talking about, the issue with regard to safety culture. Next, please. These four case studies actually, the case study that widely known by especially those who are studying the process safety management. Okay, and then the first two classical case history, have triggered the global community to come out with, a stringent regulation when it's come to the operation of high risk industry. So next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I also will share with you two case histories that occurred in Malaysia. The first one, the one that occurred in Selangor, the Sungai Buloh. Please, I need someone to change the slide. Okay, this is the one that occurred in Malaysia back in 1991. Uh, this incident actually the one that triggered our government to come up with stringent regulation when it's come into the operation of high risk industries, especially those industries that involve the using of hazardous chemicals. So because of this incident, our Malaysian government has come up with one specific regulation. We call it SIMAH regulation, being gazetted in 1996. 5 years after this incident. This SIMAH regulation, highlighted or introduced the management system to industry, those having those process or produce or store a certain amount of hazardous chemicals, so they need to comply with regulation. Whereby our our enforcement agencies will frequently do the inspection and monitoring to those industries to make sure that they fulfill or they comply with this regulation. Next, please. Okay, this one is the latest one that occurred in Kim. We call it Kim pollution tragedy. Please back to the previous slide. Okay, so this one actually due to the illegal dumping of the toxic waste. Okay, and then it's caused thousands of evacuation of the victim. But luckily, this incident was not cause any death toll. Just most of the victim or most survivor actually face breathing difficulty, and then they've been treated properly, and then luckily no record of the fatalities. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, this is actually the accident and incident due to human behaviors and performance that been recorded or been stated by the academic journals, whereby it's clearly stated that about 80% of the accidents is caused by human errors, and then when it's come into industry accident, maximum of 90% due to unsafe act on poor performance, and 80% of the accident occurred in petrochemical and chemical industries due to operator error or procedural violation, and there's 75%. Approximately 75% accident occur in marine due to human decision, due to fatigues, and then due to the communication failures. And then 70% of the aviation accidents attributed to pilot error or misjudgment. And then overall, from the statistic, we can come into the conclusion that most of the incident result from human behaviors and performance issue, such as carelessness, such as stress, maybe fatigue and lack of training. Next, please. Next, please. Okay. So let's take a quick look at how safety research has evolved over time. In the early stages, research mainly focused on human factors, environmental condition, and then technical failures. And then the main goal back then was to develop better hazard control technologies in order for us to prevent accidents from happening. And later, as major disasters were analyzed, we're talking about disaster analysis. Disaster here in the context of technological disaster. Okay, and then it's become clear that causes were not just technical. Many were linked to poor management, weak policies, and then inadequate procedures. And following that, researchers began to apply the idea of safety culture retrospectively. Okay, so meaning they look back at past accident and use the concept of safety culture to explain why those incidents occurs. So that is why in the beginning of my presentation, I did share with you a lot of the case studies. Okay? Because by understanding the case studies, by understanding the lesson learned from the case studies, we'll be able to improve what so-called the safety culture environment within our organization. And today the focus is on understanding safety culture itself, identifying which aspect of organization culture influence safety performance. And we also start to understand how leadership, how communication, and then share values contribute to preventing accident. So the evolution of the safety research shows a shift from focusing on individuals and equipments to understand the broader organizational and cultural factors that shape, safety outcomes. So next, please. Okay. So this figures show, the evolution of safety industry. So, as you know, I explained to you before, this is also the quite similar contents. So it begins with safety engineering, where during that time, the main focus was engineering solution. For example, designing safety machine, and then improving the equipments, and then preventing accident through technology. And then we are also discuss about design for safety. All of this actually, pertaining to engineering solution. And then came the pace of policies and regulation, where during that time, the governments and organizations, started implementing formal safety rules and compliance system in order for them to control, workplace hazard. And next, the focus shifted to behavior-based safety, or in short, we call it BBS. This content already been touched a lot by previous speaker, Bapak Samsul. Okay, so emphasizing the needs, to change human behavior, encouraging workers to follow safe practices and then avoid risky action. And then finally, the modern approach is safety-based safety. Sorry, culture-based safety. This is the one that we are going to discuss today. Okay, where safety culture is an approach to integrate into the organization values, organization leadership, and daily practices. And this, making safety a shared responsibility at every level. So over the time, safety industry has progressed from purely technical control to a more human and what's so called the cultural approach. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So when it's come into the definition of safety culture, actually, there is no single universal definition of safety culture. However, most scholars generally describe it within a similar scope, focusing on the individuals and groups that make up an organization. So when we talk about building a safety culture, it's involved three main components. The first one, we call it values. So we're talking about the shared values of individuals and group. that can help shape how safety is perceived and how safety is prioritized. And then the second domain is about behaviors and actions. So we are talking about the consistent safe practices and the decision made by individuals and groups or teams in their daily work. And then the third one, the last one, we are talking about belief and attitudes, whereby it's about underlying mindset that reflects how seriously people take safety and how committed they are to maintaining it or to maintaining this safety environment. And then together, these elements form the foundation of strong and sustainable safety culture in any organization, regardless whether they are manufacturing or whether they are processing or whether they are servicing. So next, please. Okay, this just to brief you about the overview of the safety culture models. So we have a lot of safety culture models being introduced by many scholars. Okay, next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so out of the many models and theories of safety culture that I showed you just now, I will focusing on the Cooper model. Okay, so according to Cooper, culture actually is the result of multiple goal directed interaction between three key elements. The first one, people, which represent the psychological aspect; jobs, which reflect the behavioral aspect; and then the organization, which form the situational aspect. Okay, and in simpler terms, safety culture is the visible efforts shown by everyone in the organization as they continuously, focus their attention and action on improving safety every single day. And so, the couple models actually remind us that safety culture doesn't exist in isolation. It is a living system shaped by how people think, how they act, and then how the organization supports those actions. So these three domains actually need to be focused by any organization because we want to make sure that the workers being what we call it accustomed with these three domains. And then as an employer, we also have the responsibility to ensure, you know, we focus and we emphasize on these three domains to make sure that safety culture actually a part of our corporate practice. Next, please. Okay, let's discuss a bit about the Bradley curve model. Okay, on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see a figure showing the relationship between the injury rate and then the level of safety practice. So according to this curve model, safety culture can be divided into four categories. So the first one, we call it reactive, and then followed by dependence, independence, and interdependence. Okay. As an organization progress from reactive approach, where people only respond after an incident, towards an interdependence approach, where everyone actively look out for one another, so the injury risk decreases. Okay. And at the same time, the level of safety practice moves towards voluntary participation and high level of risk management. So in short, the more engaged and united the workforce becomes, the safer the organization will be. So okay, theoretically, it's look very simple, isn't it? But the organization itself need to make sure that we have a certain system to make sure that we move from a reactive approach to interdependent approach to make sure that this approach will be able to decrease the rate of injuries and at the same time will increase the high level of risk management. And then on the right hand side of the slide, you can see the relationship between mental health and safety culture. And then a supported workplace actually plays a crucial role here. When organization values mental well-being and encourage open communication between staff and management, employees will feel more confident, more focused, and careful. However, when mental health is poor, it often leads to mistakes, unsafe behaviors, and of course, it's going to reduce the performance. So, in contrast, Strong safety culture promote safer and then more positive and then more productive working environment, whereby people don't only look after their own safety, but also support the well-being of others around them. So nurturing mental health is not just about personal care. It is actually, the key part of what's so called the sustaining a strong and effective safety culture. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is actually I just would like to share with you the case study about safety culture in mining industry in Malaysia. So this study actually the one that I did it with my student, whereby we conduct what's so called the analysis to identify the influencing factors of the safety culture among mines owner. Okay, so the background of the study. So after we conducted what's so called the systematic literature review, okay, to find out the influencing factors or the causes of the mine accident occurred as being reported in academic journal. So it shows that most of the accident cause are due to mechanical failure and poor safety management. Okay, next please. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is actually the safety culture study in Malaysia in the context of mining industry. So after went through the literature review been written with regard to safety culture study in Malaysia, and we accounted that none of the study been done on safety culture in mining industry. So that's why we come out with this project proposal, and then we start to do the research on this. Next, please. Okay. So the background of the study, okay. So according to the Social Security Organization of Malaysia, so we call it SOSO in short. So they have received more than 100,000 claims every year for industrial and commuting accidents. And then approximately more than 70,000 accidents be reported. And for the mining accident only, an average of 374 mine accident per year be reported. Okay. And then according to DOSH, the Malaysia's Department of Occupational Safety and Health, it's been reported that approximately 370 cases been reported in 2019 due to mining accidents. And then uh, that's why the safety culture focus on root causes of the accident and then not symptom of accident, leading to more effective accident prevention strategy. And then at the same time, safety culture is defined as a social construct that is used by industry and regulators to describe the way that safety is managed in organization to avoid catastrophe and personal injury. Next slide, please. So this is actually the issue. Next slide, please. Okay, here actually this is the issue. The first one is to create a safe workplace and responsible mine workers. Second one, small but significant industries. Even though mining industry is small economic sectors in our country. I mean, I'm referring to Malaysia, but they give a very significant impact to Malaysian economy. And then the third one, a huge gap on safety culture research and scientific publication in mining industry in Malaysia compared to other countries. Next. So finally, this is actually the outcomes of the study. Okay. So from this, we can conclude that safety culture in mining, and I will try to relate it with the three domains that have been introduced by Cooper model. Okay. The first one is psychological factors, followed by situational factors, and then behavioral factors. So as for psychological factors, it consists of 5 elements, 5 influencing factors that we already identified through this research. The first one, management care on workers, safety attitude, job satisfaction, health of workers, and then the peer influence. And the second one is situational factors, consists of safety policy, safety audit, safety rule competence, safety rules, sorry, competent safety health officer, safety education, and up to safety signage. And as for behavioral factors, the first factor with regard to management action and responsibility, followed by safety communication, and then ended by reward and punishment. So this is actually the influencing factors that we already encountered through our research project with regard to safety culture in mining industry in the context of Malaysia. Next, please. Next slide, please. The last one. Okay. So finally, this is actually the outcome, the ultimate outcome of this project. So we have come up with the proposal for safety culture framework for mining industry in Malaysia. Okay. According to this framework, we have identified that there are 5 critical factors that need to be emphasized by mines owners. Okay. The first one, with regard to safety attitudes. So we are talking about behavior of the miners or behaviors of their workers. And then next, we are talking about leadership. We are talking about the effort from the top management. If top management do not have any effort to ensure, or to inculcate the safety culture among their workers or within the organization, nothing can be happen. That's why when we talk about safety, commitment from top management is essential. It is imperative to ensure that top management will give their full effort to ensure that safety culture is a part of their corporate policy or part of their corporate objective. And then we are talking about enforcement on safety rules. Enforcement here doesn't mean enforcement from the government agencies. We also talk about internet enforcement. Internet enforcement means we need to have a good mindset among the top management, especially the managerial level of people, to make sure that everyone comply to safety procedures. Everyone are always being reminded about their rules. Everyone are always being asked about their rule and be asked to avoid any hazard or to report the hazard. And then, of course, we need to frequently make sure that safety awareness program are in place. Okay, because when we talk about culture, we are not talking about one-off project or one-off approach. We are talking about continuous approach. So that means awareness program is not one-off program. It must be continuous program. It's better to make sure or to organize the safety awareness program every day. For example, during the morning briefing, for example. So because people need to we believe that people always need to be reminded. We need to keep on reminding people about safety. It's not one-off approach. Must be done frequently. Okay. And then lastly, we're talking about rewards and punishment. So the management need to make sure that they introduce the reward and punishment uh, program. Those or department that having less accident, for example, or zero accident will be rewarded. Okay, and then those having the or those having the increment of injury rate will be punished, for example. And this can be done, as a part of approach to encourage people to do their work safely and then to follow all the procedures. Okay, next, please. Okay, I think that's all from me. Hopefully, all the inputs are beneficial to every one of you. And then very sorry, because actually today I'm still under the weather. I'm still not feel so well for the past 2 weeks. Sorry for the past 2 days. But anyway, last but not least, I leave it back to the moderator to open for the Q&A session. Please.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Azizan. So, right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move into the Q&A questions. As before, for the participant, please type your questions in the chat box, or you may use the raise hand feature if you wish to ask directly. And the session is also being live streamed on YouTube, where participants are encouraged to join the discussion and submit their question directly through the live chats. And the committee will move into the chat box. So, Dr. Azizat, let's start with a question to set the stage for our discussions. From your research and experience in technological hazards and disaster preventions, so what mental health factors are often overlooked in safety culture initiatives?
Okay, thank you very much. Very tough question. Okay. So anyway, when we talk about mental health, something related with the inside, isn't it? Something related with the individuals. Okay, so that's why it's very important. Back to the safety culture model that I share with everyone just now. So any organization they need to focus to make sure that these three domains, you know, are in place. So every single of the approach might towards, should toward these three domains. Okay, the way how they create the environment, the working environment. Of course, this responsibility being shouldered by the top management, and the way how the individual understand the concept. So this can go through by by frequent awareness program. So frequent awareness program is very important. It's not just one off program, as I mentioned to you before. Okay, so that's why individuals do have their own responsibility to understand and then to be reminded all the time. Employers have also the responsibility to make sure that conducive environment be provided to their workers, and then make sure that the regulation, the procedures are in the place. Okay, and then at the same time, you know, the system must be there. I'm talking about OSH management system. It doesn't mean that we need to follow the system that we introduced by ISO 45,000. That's why actually on the guideline, isn't it? So some organization they do not have enough money to implement, or to fulfill the certification of ISO 45,000. But they actually can do it internally. They can create or can develop their own management system, OSH management system. But this management system must focus on these three domains. This is the main point. We are not talking about the system itself. We are not talking about the technology itself. We are talking about how do we frequently make sure that our workers follow the safety rule or follow the safety procedure, and then also the top management how they understand, the needs to implement what so called the need to implement or to provide the safer working environment to their workers. This is my simple answer for that question. Thank you very much.
All right. So, how can leadership play a more proactive role in addressing mental well-being as a core element of safety management system? Because Dr. Azizan, in Indonesia, so I'm not talking about all of the company, but some of company, the top management still don't care about how the workers work, how the workers mental health or something like that. They meant like they only want for profit or something like that, but they don't care about the workers. Like,
Okay.
how can leadership play a more proactive if the case like that?
Okay, very interesting question. Okay. Okay, talking about the role of leadership,
Mm.
okay, the role of the top management. This problem actually happen everywhere, not only in Indonesia. I believe that it's happening everywhere. Most of the because you must understand, actually, any type of businesses, actually, they are profit-oriented business. Meaning to say they judge everything by dollars and cents. Of course, no company or no business, want to invest more in safety rather than getting back the profit. It's really clear cut. So that's why one thing that we need to put into our consideration or put into the account, the understanding of the top management about actually invest. Sorry, OSH management implementation of OSH management actually is an investment. It's not expenditure. So when we talk about investment, we need to say company going to get back the profit, indirectly or directly. So OS must be considered as investment, not expenditure. So when we talk about investment, we need to say we're talking about ROI, isn't it? If company invest, this amount of money, to implement OS, for example, to buy, to purchase, technologies, safeguard technologies for the machinery, so on and so forth. So they must think that this actually the investment, not expenditure. So they're going back, they will get back their money actually. So that's why recently, some of the scholars they start to do the research on OS investment. They try to come out with tools to measure the OS investment in the form of ROI, or return of investment. So I do believe that if the safety practitioner can come out with their own tool to convince their management by showing them dollars and cents, if they invest in this, for example, if they invest in this technology or they invest in this management system, so this is the ROI. So they need to show to their top management the economic analysis of the OS investment. So this is one way to convince the top management. Because we must we must admit that the industry, especially the small and medium industries, their motivation is not safety, their motivation is money. Okay, so that's why the way how we convince the management is very important. So how to convince them? We need to come out with facts and figures. If we have that kind of tool to show them, so this is the ROI that you can get back, this is the return that you can get back, even though we invest in this kind of technology or this kind of system. I do believe that you will be able to convince them.
All right. So it's like
Okay.
we need a cost benefit analysis or something like that. So
Yes, surely,
all
surely.
right.
Cost and benefit analysis is very important for me.
Mm.
For the certificate, so for the safety president to convince their management, you need to come up with that. You need to show them the fact and figures.
All right. So another question from Mr. Yuga Praina Pawitra to Mr. Azizan. Can you describe how to check the maturity of safety culture in the organizations?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Actually, you know, there are a lot of studies being done by scholars, by previous scholars, especially when they want to determine the level of safety culture in the organization. And then there are also a few tools available outside that you can be used to measure the baseline of the safety culture in our organization. For example, the one that we introduced by NOSEC, for example. Okay, you can use that tool, and it's come in the form of questionnaire. Because by using that tool, you'll be able to determine the baseline of the safety culture you practice in your organization. And after that, after you get that result, you can come out with the intervention. And then some of the big companies, for example, in our country, Petronas, they do have the tool to measure the status quo of safety culture among their workers. They're using the concept of they call it heart and mind question, set of questionnaires. And then I do believe that Pertamina do have the same, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. Pertamina also have the tool to measure the baseline of the safety culture or the status quo safety culture, amongst Pertamina's workers, if I'm not mistaken. They also have a set of questionnaire with regard to the perception of the workers, the perception of the managers, and also the perception of the contractors. So this tool actually can be used to understand or to encounter the baseline safety culture practice in organization. So after that, we analyze this result because this tool actually in the form of questionnaire. It's very simple. Okay, we just use certain tool to analyze, and then from that result we can come up with the intervention. Again, when we talk about safety culture, it's not about one-off approach. Okay, it is actually the continuous approach.
All right.
That's all from me. Hopefully, I'm answering you.
Also, maybe Mr. Yuga tried to say that is there any official tools to check the maturity, or maybe Mr. Yuga wants to use the tool for research or something like that.
Okay, that's why, as I mentioned to you earlier, we have that actually. For example, the NOSAQ, NOSAQS. Okay, the NOSAQ set of questionnaire. You can Google it actually. It published in multiple languages. If I'm not mistaken, it also published in Indonesian language. Okay, you can use that set of questionnaire to understand, the status quo of certain culture practice in the organization. And then the second one, as I mentioned to you earlier, been practiced in Petronas and Pertamina as well. Actually, I have that set of questions, but I cannot share it today. Hopefully, Mr. What's the name of the what is the name of the audience that asked that question to me? Bapak, I can't hear your voice, Miss Dihan.
All right, sorry. Mr. Yuga Praina.
Okay, Mr. Yogo, you can contact me personally. And inshallah, I will try to share with you that tools.
All right. So another questions from Miss Aline. Mr. Aziz, and I would like to ask question. What should we do when we are surrounded by such unhealthy social environment, especially in workplace? As a Gen Z, so this is a Gen Z questions. I have seen several cases where the previous generation are normalizing the unhealthy environment. Me, as a Gen Z, feel that the previous generation somehow underestimating someone's psychological state in the workplace, where these are also crucial things that we should overcome with it, which I believe that unwell psychological state could lead into incident.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So anyway, you know, normally all people they always take for granted. you know, we are talking about the generation before Gen Z. Okay,
Millennial.
especially my generation. Okay, anyway, so there is why as I mentioned quite frequent. It is a need for us to make sure that safety awareness been organized every day to keep on reminding people. And I do believe, some of the, especially the seniors workers, for example, let's say they are doing this job for more than 40 years. They are about to retire. Sometimes they are take for granted on the safety issue. This actually definitely will happen. Because what they say, oh, we have done this work for more than 40 years and nothing happened to us. So why do we need to follow the rules, for example? They always give the argument, am I right? So that's why it's very important. Everybody in the organization need to understand their responsibility. If we encounter or we see this kind of mindset, so there is actually our responsibility to remind them. And if we are unable to do that, please report to your superior. Okay, commitment reporting to the superior is not show that you try to you try to blame others or you try to blame the seniors. But this is actually the way how we try to save them from from accident. So that's why this kind of culture, okay, again, culture, reporting, whistleblowing, understanding, keep on reminding is very important. Okay, so that's why everybody need to cooperate. Okay, so we need to cooperate, and then we try to convince them to make sure that everybody follow the rule, everybody understand their responsibilities, and everybody try to make sure that they create the safer environment not only to them but to others as well.
Right. So, thank you very much, Dr. Azizam, for sharing such insightful perspective on psychology-based approach to a holistic safety and health culture in industry. So, at this time, we would like to acknowledge and express our sincere appreciation for the valuable contribution of our speakers. And we are now delighted to move forward with the presentation of certificates of participation to honor the role of speaker at the Iosh Summit to 2025. So the committee, please get ready for the certificate. All right. We present this certificate as a gesture of gratitude for your unwavering commitment to fostering occupational safety and health through a blend of knowledge, compassion, and human focus for a holistic safety culture. And we proudly present this certificate to Dr. Azizan bin Ramli as a speaker of Iosh Summit 2025 webinar speaker. So, and now we will capture the moment, and I will count in 3, 2, 1. All right. And all for all the participants, let's capture this moment with Dr. Azizan, and you can turn on your camera. All right. For all the participants, let's capture this moment, and you can turn on your camera. All right, and now we will capture the moment. And 3, 2, 1. All right, next slide. And 3, 2, 1. Next slide. And 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you for our speaker, Dr. Azizan, and participant. And once again, let us give our speaker, Dr. Azizan, a big round of virtual applause. And we sincerely appreciate your time, effort, and passion in advancing occupational safety and health practice through a psychology-based approach. And thank you very much, Dr. Azizan, and see you on another event. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now continue our discussion with our next panelist, who will deliver another important dimensions of our summit theme, Mr. Beng Huang Tae.
Hi. Shall I introduce myself or?
Now I can see you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Beng Huang Tae, I will introduce you. Okay, Mr. Beng Huang Tae, what should I address you? Is it Mr. Beng?
Tae, Mr. Tae.
Oh, Mr. Beng, okay.
Tae.
Oh, Tae, Mr.
Yeah.
Tae. Mr. Tae, okay. Mr. Tae is a chartered psychologist and associate fellow of the British Psychological Society, as well as a registered psychologist under the Singapore Register of Psychologists, with extensive experience spanning applied psychology, counseling, education, entrepreneurship, and also he brings a unique blend of scientific insight and real-world application to his work. Mr. Tae currently serves as director and consultant at Podium 365 PTE Ltd and as a researcher and lecturer at Temasek Polytechnic Center for Applied Behavioral Science. His professional journey includes leadership roles in occupational psychology consulting, human factors, and behavioral insight across both public and private sectors, working with clients such as Singapore Airlines, Microsoft, and Ministry of Defense. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tae as he shared insight of integrating psychology into the implementation of the occupational safety and health management system. Mr. Tae, you have 15 minutes to present your presentation and 15 minutes to discuss of discussion time, and time is yours.
Wait, did I get it correct? 50 minutes to talk,
15.
15 to...
Discussion.
Okay, got it. I'll try to keep it short. You guys have had a long morning.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Somebody putting up the slides, or will I be sharing? Will somebody be putting up my slides, or am I going to be sharing myself?
Do you want to share by your own?
Sure, I could do that.
Okay. The access is opened.
Okay, let me do it right. Okay. Let me just switch this around. Okay, maybe let's do it this way. Can you guys see it all right?
I'm sorry.
Is this okay? Can you guys see it?
Okay, yeah. Is
Okay,
it
perfect. Is it big enough?
is it big enough and perfect?
Okay, great, perfect. Okay. Apologies, I'm so used to using Teams, I can barely figure out how to use Zoom anymore.
All right.
Right, okay, very good afternoon to everyone, where you're from, 200 over people. Big thank you for Civilas Merit University for inviting me to this summit. I was listening to Dr. Azizan in his previous session, and it seems as though I think he's covered quite a fair bit, quite extensively. And in fact, the word culture has come up a little bit. So as I was listening to it, I think I might shift gears a little bit in my session. The intention when I was pitched to do this was to cover the perspective of applied psychology on occupational health and safety. And my initial thoughts was to talk more a little bit about the general approach towards how we apply to culture, climate, and so on and so forth. And in fact, a little bit on measurement. But I think that's been talked quite a fair bit. In fact, I think based on the points that was raised earlier, I might like to put a bit more emphasis on the later half of my presentation, which was initially just meant to be a footnote, but I think there are some points in here which I think addresses some of the questions that were raised to Dr. Azizan earlier. I think some of the curiosities that people have about how best to deal with safe culture, how best to deal with leadership, people of different generations of a certain work habit that generally just compromises on safety altogether. I think I'd like to spend a bit more time on that, so you guys have a better takeaway from the time I have with you. Now, perhaps let me just spend a bit of time briefly explaining what I do, because that leads very nicely to why I'm here to begin with. You've very nicely flashed my CV to everyone, so most of you who can read fast enough can probably catch a glimpse of where I've come from. But long and story short, I am a trained psychologist, specifically industrial organizational psychology. I have multiple professional memberships, mainly with the UK, where I received my postgraduate training, and with Singapore, where I'm currently based and practicing. I'm qualified to do test use for workplace, and I'm qualified to practice as well as supervise fellow psychologists in my field. And as you can see, my undergrad qualifications were taken in Australia. My postgraduate I completed in the UK, which incidentally, relevant to today, is the UK and European system of education for workplace psychology. They cover a bit of human factors, unlike other geographical regions, which is what caught my interest, which I guess, long story short, brings me a little bit here with you guys today. So, psychology, I'm sure we've heard that term before, and I think I won't be surprised if this was actually brought up a few times in this entire morning's conference, which is partly the focus of our gathering here today. So perhaps I would just like to ask, you don't have to answer me or chat or type in the chat or anything, but off the top of your head, what is your impression of a psychologist? Because everywhere I go to, I would ask this question, and generally the image I show here of a mental health professional talking to somebody dealing with your personal issues, your stress, your depression, your anxiety, whatsoever, that mental health impression is generally what people tend to get with psychology, which, to be fair, isn't wrong, because I think the most dominant part of practicing psychology is related to psychological health and mental well-being. But as I've introduced myself earlier, you can see that that is not the only type of psychology. We have people practicing psychology in hospital, clinical settings, like myself, in workplace settings. I have peers working in schools doing research, focusing on education. I have peers in the judicial system dealing with forensic criminal issues. Of course, I know people in the defense industry that deals with soldier military behavior as well as leadership. So it's far and wide. And the long and short of it is, right? Psychology, essentially, it is just an applied science. And in fact, I think in this current room, I've not had time to go through all 200 over names, but I'm sure a lot of you here would fall under a similar umbrella of being scientist practitioners. In fact, I think Dr. Azizan is a perfect example, right, of what a scientist practitioner is, right? You take what you learn in science and you bring it into practice. You apply that knowledge, or rather your pursuit of that knowledge is meant to inform on real world problems, real world situations. So you could be a chemist, you could be a physicist, you could be a geologist, or you could be dabbling very specifically in occupational health and safety, right? But fundamentally, you are trying to use the scientific method, scientific information to inform on real world situations. And if your focus is purely on how people, humans, think, feel, behave, then you're a psychologist, right? The science that you practice is behavioral science, psychology. And in my specific case, not only am I interested in how people think, feel, and act, I'm not dabbling in all areas. My foundation is there, but I've chosen to specialize specifically in all of that applied to the workplace situation. So it could be individuals at work, your individual careers, your individual job choices, or your individual performance, right down to the collective of a group of people within an organization, which then trickles into other things that you guys were talking about: safety, culture, climate, so on and so forth. The bigger picture things that you see happening within a company. So hopefully you guys get that idea. At the very least, if you walk away with nothing today, you get a better idea of what a psychologist is, right? It's not just mental health. And at least you know there's this thing called industrial organization psychologist or workplace psychologist. So what kind of things do we do? In fact, one of the common simple explanations I like to give to people is we put the human in human resource. Because everybody understands human resource, right? It is a standalone field, but there is a human factor, right? Of how people behave, how people are different, and all the decisions that affect people, we kind of have a higher level operation into it. So when it comes to getting the right people to do the right job, right? Your management and your selection of talent and ensuring that the fairness is taking place in terms of getting the right people for the job, ensuring that the right people, the performance is being recognized and that there's no discrimination. All of that we dabble in. We talk about making sure that they can perform on the job, right? Ensuring that the training is adequate, ensuring that where they are and where they aspire to be, what the gaps are, and ensuring that we can build them up to it, ensuring that individuals or collective who are not performing well, what are the gaps and how can we raise that performance, either in terms of behavior, in terms of capability. We dabble in that as well. And of course, the overall design of the environment, how people interact with each other and interact with the environment, and how that then affects the way they perform, the amount of things they have to do, their interaction with the physical environment, the digital environment, right? And in a post-COVID world, working from home and having be asked to return to your physical workplace. And even right down to things like safety, right? How do we ensure that a person being put in a high risk, very volatile, risk-taking environment, how do we make sure that they're able to perform and be able to take care of the safe behaviors despite the situation environment being very challenging? And on the basis of all of this, we don't do all of that just based on hocus pocus and imagination or reading some airport bestseller. No. The reason why in my previous slide, I emphasize on the term scientist practitioner. Taking scientific information, scientific knowledge, scientific approach towards what we do is the fact that we are evidence informed. There are measurements, there are right approaches to evaluating information, ensuring that what we do is valid, reliable to the situation, and turning all of that general insight into something that's very specifically applicable to the context that we're dealing with in that specific client or the specific person we're dealing with. That's what it means to be a psychologist. And anyone who's not doing that, right, that is questionable whether or not they are actually a scientist practitioner to begin with. So how does all this related to occupational safety and health? Now, I do have to confess, right? I'm not an OSH professional. I do have some experience with clients, whether it's dealing with selecting people for environments that's highly volatile and requires a lot of safety concerns, or is developing leadership to deal with these areas, or is evaluating work environments to ensure that there are the right safe behaviors are nudged. In fact, to the point where when a safety lapse occurs and a nasty situation happens and we have to go in and do the post-mortem and debrief for the survivors, I've dabbled in safety and health in those regards, but I'm not an OSH professional, to say the least. I do have to clarify that in advance, right? So I trust most of you here come from that background and you have better understanding of what all of that is. But I'd just like to take reference to the most established standards from what I understand, which is the ISO 45001, which is what I understand to be the international standard for occupational health and safety management systems. And I like to take reference specifically to their 4-step process of what proper OSH is about, right? The PDCA. You plan, you do, you check, and you act. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but I'd just like to park this right here, this simple PDCA thing. I'm sure you can refer to, you probably are very familiar with this if you're not already, with this ISO standard. The literature is out there, available in public domain, right? And if this is the workplace health and safety standards, how does a behavioral science professional who understands individual and group human behaviors in the workplace setting specifically apply what we do to this very specific work context? How do we help plan objectives? How do we help the execution, checking effectiveness, and reiterating it to make sure that there are improvements, right? How does leadership come into it? How do workers come to it? How does the collective environment, interactive environment come to it? That's kind of where the IO psych skills and tasks, all the things that I mentioned earlier that we do, apply directly to safety. So instead of just looking at general work, I'm looking at work tasks and people and ability and performance that's related to all the safety issues. And I'm not so sure if in any of your work experience, you've actually had a chance to interact with professionals like myself, no matter which country you're from. Sometimes you might, right? Because you have established safety systems, you have all your policies and protocols in place, but somehow or rather, as the questions have indicated, sometimes you do have a problem with the human factor. Why are my people not following my rules? Why is my reward and punishment system not acting as it should on my people? Why is my leadership not doing this way? Why is this older generation person acting in a way that's so different from my contemporaries? Things like that. That's usually where we come in, where we take that, the human level subject matter knowledge and apply it to the work that you're trying to do. So that's usually where it comes hand in hand. You know your work domain. We know the human factor. And we come together to solve that contextual problem that you have. And when we talk about health and safety, this word comes up a lot, culture. And I'd like to introduce another C word, climate. And I don't know how often these two words are used in tandem or in place of each other, but I do want to clarify, because even in the circles that I dabble with, most people tend to mix up the two, right? And they use it interchangeably. I just like to clarify right now, when we talk about culture, it is kind of akin to our general human understanding of the word culture. It's basically how a group of people come together and establish this is how we behave, this is how we do things, this is what is acceptable. So what you understand of your ethnic culture, your national culture, is essentially similar when you apply it to an organization. But what is climate? If culture is basically generally how things are, climate is more like a pulse. It's ongoing, it's always shifting. It is what is happening currently. My culture may be great, but climate is not doing very well right now. Right? Or my culture is absolutely chaotic, but somehow or other, on a day-to-day basis, my current climate is actually okay because things are doing right. So you can see that one is a general background, one is an ongoing status. So if you look at it in terms of safety culture, so essentially it's all the broad aspects of what my organization believes and understands about what safety means here. And the climate is at the present time. How do we see our policies? What are we doing? What do we prefer to do now as a priority versus other things? Not the big picture, but the here and now. So in terms of its impact, right? We want to build cultures. Why? Because it sticks. It is the baseline and it's built for longer term. And it's great for aligning with your direction and where leadership needs to be and designing short-term things to align with longer-term goal. It's great. But you cannot overlook the importance of your pulse, your climate, because that is something that's tangible, that's ongoing, and there's always a flux. It is hard to establish where your culture is, but it's very easy to establish where your climate is at, because that's what's going on right now. So that's one very important distinction to make. Okay? Because here's the thing, if I may just jump the gun a little bit, if I can measure culture, and if everybody has the right understanding, they've gone for the courses, they've read the books, they know what the laws and policies are, I'm sure they can give you very fantastic answers in terms of what safety and well-being and risk management is. So the culture may be correct, right? And all the rules are in place because HR and whoever it is has all the books in place. But the climate might be very different. You might go down there and may look at things. Yes, we understand it, but what we're actually doing, are we actually following it? Are we cutting corners? Are we just filling forms for the sake of filling forms? Do we ignore certain things? Or do we do certain things without understanding why this is being done or how it aligns with the culture? Loopholes appear when you measure the pulse, when you measure the climate. So it's important to distinct, right? Your overall versus your day-to-day. So if I may just skim through this real quickly, because these are very general points, right? So when it comes to workplace psychologists dealing with culture, we usually deal with values, perceptions, and beliefs of the staff across different levels. We try to look at what are the established rules and norms for behaviors. We're looking at the policy level, perception level, execution level. We look at how all that translates to the way people are hired, people are trained, people are promoted, and we look at generally what people's sentiments are towards the organization, not just internally, but even external people looking at your organization as a potential employer. How do they view working here and the people working here? Whereas climate, ongoing pulse. Am I happy right now? Do I like my current position right now? Am I stressed? Am I thriving? Am I enjoying my work right now? If I move to a new situation, when something changes, how quickly am I adjusting? Notice it's an ongoing, it's the current state of how well you're doing versus the overall background. Hopefully I've belabored the point enough. You guys get the distinction. Okay. Now, coming to the critical part. So this is not all just talk. Even as I was introducing those points earlier, you realize I've already talked about where we measure them, where we put our finger on the pulse, right? There are many, many ways of measuring situations, constructs, how people think, feel, and act. Essentially, as psychologists, the key distinction, in fact, as scientist practitioners, the key distinction is that we let the data speak for itself. We gather information through all sorts of different means in order to understand a situation, infer where a problem might be and where the solution needs to be at, and then we act on it. And it's not just measure for measurement's sake. I'm not using some kind of Facebook quiz on what Marvel character you are, or just going down and just talking to two people, getting their anecdotal sentiments. No, there are proper ways to measure. And I think in your respective research fields, you probably understand what it means in your fields, whether it's hard science or soft sciences, on what measurement is. And common concepts we have, I think we all agree with validity, reliability. Are you measuring what you're supposed to measure? And are you measuring it consistently? And in all our respective professions, just as in OSH, I'm sure there are professional guidelines that's being passed down to ensure that you are indeed measuring what you're supposed to measure. In fact, for psychology, we have, whether you're looking at the American Psychological Association's guides for how testing is to be done, or specifically the Society for Industry Organizational Psychologists on occupational testing, particularly for use in testing people for jobs, or even right down to BPS, which is the standard I adhere to, the Register for Qualification of Test Use, on what it means to be a qualified test user and what does a qualified testing means. There are standards about. If you're wondering what is the right approach towards this when it comes to measuring psychological variables. And if you're in doubt, check with a registered psychologist within your geographical region. I'm sure they'll be able to advise you on it. And it's not all just questionnaires. I'm sure when it comes to psychological testing and assessment, everybody thinks about, oh, personality test. Let me answer 60 questions. They'll tell me everything about who I am. Please, let me just say it, that has more fluff in it than real tangible value, right? And it's an industry curse, just to say the least. It is one aspect of what we do, asking the person in concern to give me their response on a preset of questions that's supposed to describe a psychological variable. In fact, I can even do that for health and safety. I can design a questionnaire about health and safety attitudes, validate it with a large group of people, and then test it on a specific population for you to tell me what health and safety means. Or are you a health and safety? Are you a very safe person? Can be done, right? Superficially, but I think just as I describe it, all of you professionals walking the walk, you can imagine where the loopholes might occur. Because I'm sure you've actually experienced this before, and you realize it kind of doesn't really translate to the real situation on the ground. So to fight a good case, you need well-rounded evidence. And measurement is not just self-report. Yes, we can have surveys. We can ask a variety of questions, gather large numbers of people's views on a situation. We have a performance appraisals on our staff, right? Objective ratings of how well they do their jobs. We can do the same for leadership with 360s. We have situational judgment tests to test people on their ability to perform on a job. We have observations, and suffice to say, I'm not going to read everything, but there are many, many different ways to measure many different things. But ultimately, the whole point of measurement and assessment is to gather as varied a data set as possible to paint a full picture of the situation. So earlier, the question was raised to Dr. Azizan, right, on how best do I measure my safety culture and so forth. And just look at it. Are there questions you can use? Yes. Are there things you can observe on site? Yes. Are there things you can ask your people? Yes. Can they rate their supervisors? Yes. Can I design safety-related tasks and activities, and I see how well people respond in a mock situation to see whether or not their knowledge and their response is on cue? Yes. Plenty of things you can do, right? Do not think that this is something you can buy off the shelf. In your respective workplaces, in your respective positions, you understand what needs to happen on the ground. Sometimes designing something specific to the context of safety that you want is very often the better approach towards it than buying something off the shelf and hope that the general measurement is directly applicable to your specific situation. Maybe, but it's still one step removed, right? It's like using a personality test to understand you as opposed to just talking to you, understand you directly as a person. You get that, you get the difference. And why do we measure? Because here's the thing, right? We cannot leave these things to assumptions. You need to find evidence to whether or not there's something lacking in the system, something lacking in the people in terms of their specific job stations, or something lacking in terms of management, supervision, and leadership. And research has shown, and I'm not going to go in depth into it, whether or not, okay, this works. The construct of safety, culture, climate measurements, it does operationalize, it does translate into a representation of whether or not the organization is on par. In fact, as early as 1980s, right, as much as people are looking at overall organizational climate, safety is already significant enough to stand alone as a key part of an overall organization's climate issues. And it does have some links towards whether or not the behaviors show themselves, whether or not accidents do happen. And it's partly linked to how much they know, how motivated they are to actually execute their knowledge. And it's related to their responses on how much pressure the job gives them and how much resources they have to actually do what they know they're supposed to do. So long and short of it is, the more information you have, the clearer picture you can paint about the safety situation within your workspace. And I was very fortunate enough to have this come up in Dr. Azizan's answer. This is NOSEC. In fact, I'm not surprised that it came up because if you look at it, this is kind of like the most established questionnaire when it comes to measuring and diagnosing organizational safety climate by asking about employee perception on policies, practices, procedures. In fact, it is great because it's been used extensively in a lot of different countries, translated to a lot of different languages, and applied and validated. That means they've actually tested on different types of industries where safety is key, and is found to actually represent the real situation. 50 questions across 7 dimensions, right? Management safety priority, the empowerment of workers, fair handling of incidences, the workers' own commitment to safety, how is communicated and learned, trust in everybody's ability to keep safe, trust in the system. So essentially, does it really translate to safety per se? Hard to say, but it is at least designed to measure our perception of our programs and what we're doing. I think safe to say it is at least that. Because if you're asking how robust is our safety climate, that is a very loaded question to ask. Because what is safe? Because if I were to ask you, look, I mean, let's cast out the workplace issues aside. Are you a safe person? Just ask yourself as a human being, are you a safe person? Do you take care of safety? Do you take risk? Do you get yourself in dangerous situations? I'm sure most of you will say no. But how safe are you? Very difficult question to answer, isn't it? How likely if something bad happens, right? You're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get hurt. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. Because it's one thing to know that how to be safe and what I should do to be safe. It's another thing to be safe, to be certain that I am safe. So case in point, you could have questions to say, how much do we know about safety? How much do we trust in our systems? How well do I read the people around me and so on? Versus, how safe is my company? We have to know that distinction, because a lot of times we're measuring one, but we're assuming that we can magically use that to infer the other. It is still one step removed. Not to say it's unrelated. Obviously, if you're a safe person, you understand what you know to avoid risk. You won't take part in any stupid, risky activities. Obviously, your risk of getting into trouble gets greatly reduced, for sure. But it doesn't contain the situation. We have to recognize that. A lot of times, individual workers, organizations, they tend to misplace their judgment, right? And try to assume control over the uncontrollable, which then can get a little bit dangerous. Because this, particularly when it comes to complacency and so on and so forth, just because you do well on one doesn't mean you've totally control for the other. That's usually where bad things happen. Now, okay, just quickly wrap things up. Earlier, I mentioned the PDCA. Now, if we were to take the general practice of psychological applications and measurements and apply it to the ISO 45001 standards, you can see PDCA, plan, develop, so on and so forth. It does form a very nice iterative framework where you pick up the area where of safety you're concerned with, find a best way to actually measure and track that specific thing you're interested in. Make sure that wherever you're measuring is very representative of the real situation that you are concerned with. Analyze the outcomes of your measurement. And then from there, you can prioritize where exactly the risk, the pressure point at the loophole can be, and design your intervention. From there, it doesn't end. The whole point of iteration is that you have to go back and check on it again to make sure that something has indeed changed. The needle has indeed moved. Things have improved. Because why we always remeasure and redefine our focus again is because you may have fixed one thing, but your fixing of one thing may have created another leak. Or you may have fixed it, but not enough. There's something more to be done. There's always something moving and evolving. That's why, as was mentioned earlier, this thing is a non-stop process. There will always be something to keep looking at because there's no end to it. And the sooner you realize that, it actually gives you a sense of vigilance to constantly keep looking at yourself, keep making improvements, and keep checking yourself. You have to understand before you go out and solve, and after you solve, you definitely have to evaluate in order to understand how the situation has changed again and again and again. Right? In terms of application, we cannot escape that. Okay, so never assume that just because you've put a policy in place, your safety is forever assured. That magic doesn't happen. Okay, on that note, before I get into the points I want to cover, I just leave a few footnotes on what generally we understand about workplace literature and safety culture. Obviously, leadership matters. Obviously, a great culture matters. I'm not just going to leave it superficially here. I'm just going to skim right through because I think the later point I'm going to make is going to cover this in greater depth. So I'll just leave this here for you to read casually on the slides when I share with you, because I really want to talk about this one instead. Because fundamentally, if I strip away all the terms, leadership, right, intergenerational behaviors, workplace, talent, culture, climate, whatever it is, let me strip all that away. Okay, whether we look at work in general or safety in general, fundamentally, what is going on here, what I'm concerned with as a workplace psychologist is how do people behave at work, individually or collectively. And this concept of safety, psychological safety is, I know, incidentally, we are talking about safety here, but this term psychological safety came up recently when we talked about general a workplace climate or a work environment that affects people's behaviors. And it's incidentally very relevant to some of the safety and healthcare questions that we have as well. Okay. What is a psychological safe workplace? Essentially, it is a workplace where it is safe for me to take interpersonal risk. Now, I'm sure when it comes to OSH, nobody likes to hear the word risk taking. So let me clarify. It means what? It means that in this particular workplace, I can talk very openly, my thoughts and ideas. I can point out mistakes. I can give suggestions without the fear of negative consequences, like direct punishment or humiliation. Mull over that a little bit and think about the questions you asked earlier. Why do people not speak up? Why do people stick to their guns in spite of the fact that there are rewards and punishment systems, there are complaint systems, there are feedback systems, there are whistleblowing? Ask yourself this. All of these measures are meant for a good purpose, right? The carrot and the stick and the accountability system. But how can that backfire? It backfires when people are more concerned about getting in trouble than doing the right thing. Right? People are more afraid of rocking the boat than taking the risk of improving the situation, or taking the risk of calling out a mistake that doesn't exist, but we call out nonetheless because we just want to be safe. Or being able to tell the boss, hey, I think this is not the right way to do things. And the boss saying that, you know what, I appreciate that sentiment, let's look at it. Because essentially think about it, the kind of occupational safe and healthy environment that you're looking at is about that, isn't it? You want everybody to be so invested that we can openly point out issues so that we can actively look at it. As opposed to, you know what, hey, keep quiet lah, because anything happen, I'm gonna get punished, or people are gonna call me in trouble. Wow, we already got so much complicated safety standards. Why you go and stir shit and create something else for us to do? We certainly don't want that, isn't it? You don't want things to be swept under the carpet. You don't want people to subject to groupthink, self-censorship at the risk of something that should be tackled with being ignored. You want an environment where people can speak up with their concerns and challenge opinions. Sounds fantastic, sounds ideal. Well, maybe, but it can be done. And this is why this is such a hot topic right now, and which is why I constantly bring it up whenever I'm asked to talk about culture, particularly when it comes to whether it's cultures that want to perform, thrive, or innovate, or it's cultures like what we're talking about here, where we want to make sure that we prevent errors that could literally lead to very disastrous consequences. You want an environment where people can feel free and safe to raise issues without fear of getting into any kind of psychological, emotional trouble. And when you are in the environment, think about it. On an individual level, the sense of trust and safety you have at work, the satisfaction you have with your work, the willingness to try new things, to adventure, to innovate, changes. And hence, likewise, performance, burnout, incivility, nasty behaviors, all that changes as well. particularly in high demand environments, and this is definitely something we have right here when it comes to talking about OSH. Any workplace that's concerned about risk, accidents, and so on and so forth, I'm sure it is high demand. Because any one accident is one too many. We're aiming for zero. And I hear this a lot. As much as we know zero is impossible, but we're always aiming for zero because any one accident is just too much. And that is high demand. And all the more in these environments, you got to encourage people to speak up and thrive on a day-to-day basis. Even if it means a lot of false positive hits, but at least we're constantly creating a buffer of safety, as opposed to, hey, punishment, 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 accountability, accountability, to the point that everybody fears the stick so much, nobody dares to say shit. Nobody dares to report anything because reporting means something bad has happened, I'm going to get in trouble. You want them to bring trouble to you because bringing trouble to you means that they are looking at improving the place. And there's a difficult thing to balance because especially if as an environment, I mean, as an industry, hell, as a species, we're so used to carrot and sticks. But the problem with carrot and sticks is, as I mentioned, twofold. One, you create a fear of the stick that people are operating not out of productivity or efficiency, they're operating out of getting out of trouble. So it's a case of not getting caught or not getting punished, not about doing well. And second, okay, and coming from Singapore, I think you can appreciate it. We have a lot of rules and punishments here. Okay, it takes a lot to enforce. In order to reward and punish, that means you must catch them in the act, whether good or bad. Can you watch them 24/7 to make sure you catch every single act and reward them accordingly? It takes a lot of resource. And it takes a lot of resource to punish also or reward. Right? Time, manpower. And the worst part is if you don't do it consistently and thoroughly, what's going to happen? Hey, how come that one got away with it? How come that one didn't get rewarded? How come that one didn't get punished? And then your entire system falls apart just based on one anomaly because you cannot realistically be consistent in your enforcement. That's why we have situations where, yeah, can do, don't get caught. Because why? They know the system is not consistent. They know that it's a matter of not getting caught. It is a low-hanging fruit, right? Incentives, accountability systems, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, when it comes to dealing with human beings, you have a lot of fallibility you have to tackle. Which brings me very nicely to my next point. And in fact, this next point, when it comes to health and safety and all the risk-taking behaviors, all the things I mentioned above about why people want to cut corners, so on and so forth, I can talk about this for weeks. In fact, the founder of this particular school of thought, this particular area of knowledge, System 1 and System 2, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, they wrote a great big book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and the work won a Nobel Prize. Not for psychology, for economics. The entire field of behavioral economics and behavioral insights and nudging came from this field of work. The fact that we are two-track-minded. All the things we're talking about here, or safety, regulations, doing the right thing, that's System 2. It is rational, it is slow, it is deliberate, it is very resource heavy. Most of the time, we don't think like that. We will burn out. 95% of the time, people depend on System 1. Unconscious, fast, spontaneous. We use readily available memories. We use quick associations. We use heuristics. We default on habits. Often, we use System 1. And that tends to create slips. In fact, a lot of workplace accidents, if you go and find out, do your postmortems, you realize, if you ask the person, do you not know the rule? Do you not know the procedure? Do you not know what health and safety means? You're addressing System 2. Rationally, they can tell you all the model answers. But unfortunately, you don't realize that when bad things happen, it's not because they want to, but because they're operating on a system that is automatic. And when the system changes, the situation changes, your habituation, your heuristic might not apply. Bad things happen, right? Let me give you a simple example, okay? Let's not look at complex industry situations. All of you know how to walk, right? Right? I'm sure you know how to walk. You've been walking for your entire life. I mean, so caveat, apologies to anyone who may be physically handicapped, but I guess you get the general idea, right? And these days, you see a lot of people walking around with their smartphones, looking at the screen, typing messages, sometimes playing games, sometimes watching videos while they're walking. How do they do that? It's because walking has become fast, intuitive, habitual. Don't need to think. You can walk. And sometimes, especially when you walk a path that you're so used to every day between the train station, between your commute and your home, you can practically do it just based on habituation alone. Don't need to think one. It's automatic, it's fast, it's autopilot. But do you trip? Occasionally you do. Occasionally you do slip up. When something unexpected happens along the way and your attention wasn't on it, and then that's where suddenly you realize, how come you forgot even how to walk? How can you fall down when you've been walking all your entire life? Take that analogy and think about it in terms of workplace slip-ups, errors, and accidents. That's kind of what it is. Never address system 2 the rationality, because I can assure you most people tend to know what's the right thing. Most people reasonably do not want accidents to happen. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants anyone else to get hurt. But why do bad things happen? And unfortunately, when bad things happen, we can only look back in hindsight. And this is where applied psychology comes into play again. By understanding this particular little issue we have, this design flaw that we have with the way we think and the way we operate, we can try to idiot-proof our processes. We don't assume that people will do the right thing. We assume that people are going to default to habits. We assume that people may not pay attention when overloaded. We assume that people get fatigued. We assume that people get complacent. How do I error-proof my process so that even in the slightest chance, I have so much redundancies and barriers in place that even when they slip up, something will cover their tracks, or rather cover the error and prevent a bad thing from happening, right? I mean, think about it. All of your procedures and policies and work practices, they're all trying to error-proof. But a lot of times, what people fail to do is you assume that there is conscious, deliberate effort. You assume that people's ability to use and adhere to your system is always going to be at maximum capacity. No. That's why I say you have to idiot-proof this, to the point that even when they're not paying attention, errors won't happen. And it requires an understanding of that. It requires a humility to accept that we will slip up. People can slip up, no matter how well-meaning and intention they are. Okay, that's the second point to note. The predictable irrationalities, as well as psychological safety. And last but not least, all I can say is this, okay? Despite the two general subject areas that I talk about that I think is greatly beneficial to try to take into account for building greater safe workplace behaviors and safe cultures, I must specify, okay, there is no cookie cutter approach. Psychological safety as an environment, as work environment, is great. Our predictable irrationality, designing around our system 1 and system 2, it works generally, but it only works when you look specifically at the people and the context that you're designing for, and you gather information about it. What is it about their leaders? What is it about their teams, their work processes? What is it about the job roles? What is it about the resources that's given to them, and so on and so forth? And you design based on what that environment requires, and not just buy off the shelf. That is very critical, because you are a unique work environment. You have unique people working with you. They are doing unique tasks. Even if it's from the same industry, there are going to be variations. We need to address that. A lot of times, run-of-the-mill practices like, some off-the-shelf safety product like a Take 5 card and all so on and so forth doesn't work, okay? Because, like I mentioned earlier, under normal circumstances, yes, I understand it, I may check it, but under habituation, when I'm running on autopilot, I'm going through the motion, none of these off-the-shelf checklists may stick. And I do strongly advise, okay, coming from a professional standpoint of somebody who does testing and so on and so forth, I want to shoot myself in the foot outright here. Don't use personality tests for safety. In fact, don't rely on personality tests for anything performance related, because the validity is very, very, very low. Okay, you might as well be reading the phone book or reading your horoscopes and making inferences there. You probably come up with the same effect. I'm telling you that right here. Particularly if you're buying off the shelf and you're not getting somebody to properly consult and put the entire usage of information together. Strongly advise against it, because I know a lot of buyers tend to want to rely on off-the-shelf products as though it can give you a magical screenshot of whether your worker is conscientious, is going to be not risk-taking, is going to be very safe, and so on, and rule-abiding. If this is not enough to convince you, I'd just like to remind you of this. Okay. 95% of the time, things tend to go off. People tend to behave in irrational ways. So even a self-report measure, no matter how honest they are, contextually very often fails to actually predict behavior, because situations dominate. So in closing, lumping it all together, measure, measure, measure. Okay? Measure, measure, measure. Look at your specific context, understand what exactly you're trying to assess, use the right approach to gather information about it. Okay? Culture matters. Look at the people and environment, and the desire of having justice, great leadership, communication. Think about psychological safety. Think about that environment that you're trying to create. What do leaders need to do? What do meeting systems need to happen? Need to adopt in order for that safety and trust to ensure. Okay. Be mindful of predictable rationalities. People are going to know the right thing but not be able to do the right thing. So make sure that your resource, your systems, your environments take that into account. You have great systems in place in your workplace policies in terms of the ISO standards. Make sure you create a work process of safety that is about understanding, measuring, interventions, and evaluating again. That loop has to happen. There will never be a day where you have a happily ever after, you can intervene and forever you'll be safe. That will never, ever happen. So be prepared to keep going in an endless loop of wash, rinse, repeat in order to keep that safety going. And on that note, that's all I have for you. Let's go to questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tay. And ladies and gentlemen, we will now move into the Q&A sessions. For the participant, please type your question in the chat box, or you may use the raise hand feature if you wish to ask directly. And the session is also being live streamed on YouTube, where participants are encouraged to join the discussion and submit their question directly to the live chat. Okay, let me begin by asking a thought-provoking question to spark our discussion. So,
Sure.
Mr. Tay, from your experience working with industries, what are the most common psychological barriers to implementing effective safety practice? And second question, what are the best practice for management to recognize and support employees facing mental health challenges such as anxiety or depression without compromising overall workplace safety and performance?
Okay, wow, two very different questions.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the first. What is the most common barrier? I think some of you actually mentioned it casually about this whole unwillingness to adopt. I think a lot of times the resistance is usually around change. People don't like to do things differently. And there was a comment earlier about older generation people saying, yeah, we've been doing this all these years, nothing is going to go wrong. People don't like to shift from status quo. And a lot of times when we implement practices, we always talk about in terms of, oh, things will improve, there will be a gain and so on and so forth. But as far as the people on the ground is concerned, the discomfort of doing something different versus the gains you're selling me, sometimes just doesn't drive them far enough. Sometimes what actually drives them is, hey, look, if you don't do this, something bad is going to happen. You're going to lose your status quo. I think when you reframe a certain proposition, people may be more inclined to want to get out of that comfort zone. So it could be exactly the same practice, but you have to understand, remember, system 1, system 2, right? You're thinking rationally as a policymaker, but you have to understand on the ground, the people may not understand your long-term vision. they're more concerned about their short-term immediate status quo, homeostasis, being able to do their jobs, particularly if there's a punishment system involved. If I do have to do something new, it means I may make mistakes. It means my performance will drop. And then I'm going to get into trouble and be punished and lose my bonus, whatever it is. I might as well just stay put and earn my passing mark and not do things different. So you got to be careful there, because sometimes the measures that you put in place are exactly getting in the way of the improvements that you want. It is the same, it could be the same tools, the same practices, but the way you frame it and present it to the audience can make or break your initiative. That is, if not the most common, in fact, not only does it happen almost all the time, I think it happens most of the time in any place where I see they're trying to implement some kind of change initiative, whether it's safety related or otherwise. As to your other question, so sorry, don't mind repeating, you something along how do you take care of mental health, like anxiety and depression while not affecting performance? Was that it?
Yeah.
Two very separate issues. Two very separate issues. Because usually when we look at performance, we are looking at somebody at a normal state. Let's not take mental health, let's just take physical health. When I hire a worker, I'm thinking of what you can do when you're healthy, not when, let's say, for example, you're running a fever, you can't even think straight, you can't even get out of bed. I can't judge you based on that. So likewise for mental health situations, if a worker is actually being affected by a psychological condition, could be depression, could be anxiety, and it's affecting their ability to perform, I think we have to recognize that he's not well. It's not as though he's not able to do the job, but just like him having a flu, he's sick. And he needs to get back to normality before he can deliver on the job again. And what can we as a company do to take care of him reasonably while he gets back to normality? How much does our welfare, our HR policies, and our talent system accommodate his adjustment? And more importantly, if we are the ones making him sick, likewise, if I'm causing my people to have flu and fever, then I need to reconsider my work environment. Is my environment causing anxiety and depression across the board? Right? If I'm seeing more and more people getting stressed and one or two people actually burning out and all that, do I need to reconsider the way my work environment is being conducted and the way my leadership is communicating, the way the people are interacting, the amount of jobs versus the amount of resource I'm giving them? I need to really think about that. And this is a million dollar question, right? So I hope that kind of gives you the gist of what the approach should be.
All right. So another questions from Miss Zafira. So Miss Zafira is an industrial hygiene practitioner working at environmental testing laboratory, and she would like to asking about, can NOSAC 50 be used together with COPSOC?
COPSOC.
Yeah,
Okay,
in one assessment program.
Okay, I do have to confess, I've not actually had the chance to use the NOSAC. I'm recommending it just based on my evaluation of instruments available and what the literature seems to indicate. As for COPSOC, okay, now what I would say is this, okay, in general principle, okay, it boils down to simple logic. Okay, it's not about whether one tool is compatible with another tool, but what things are we measuring? Are they measuring different things or the same thing? I know that sounds very inane and commonsensical, but that's exactly what it is. Say, for example, if I'm going for a physical health checkup, do I do package A or package B? Bottom line, you gotta ask yourself, okay, what does it do? Does it take blood tests? Does it have full blood markers? Does it have all the cancer indicators? Does it have my cholesterol health? If it gives me indications of all the variables I'm interested in, then it's enough, right? Adding another 2 or 3 more blood tests won't give me any more information. Case in point. Perhaps I'll give you an example that's more relevant to my experience. I've had a consultation with a foreign company where they want us to evaluate their assessment system, and they're using 3 or 4 different assessments. And we look at the data, we look at the scales that they were using, we realized that they were using 4 different ability tests that gives them a slightly different angle of the same damn thing, which is the general mental ability, right? So the simplest approach, we stripped 3, we kept 1. and they still give them the answer to the one thing which they're interested in. So case in point, for your question, I'm seeing it in the chat. What's the best practices? That's generally my approach, right? And I would say look through their respective literature, their technical manuals, look at the skills, what they were designed for, and ask whether or not there's an overlap in terms of the constructs. Okay. As for which dimensions correlate with incidences, oh, sorry, the chat just moved, absenteeism, turnover. Now, these are all very big questions because incidences doesn't depend on a self-reported item, nor do near misses. They are very circumstantial and coincidental. It's chaotic. Absenteeism and turnover, it may not even related to a safety issue, right? We could be very safe, but I'm absenteeism because of life circumstance, because I'm just very unhappy with my specific company and the fairness of my job versus what I'm getting. And turnover could be because, they're just not paying me well and I like a job elsewhere, right? So be careful of just taking labels and assuming that there's this magical existing construct that relates to safety. No, okay. What a person does or a group of people do on the job in a real situation versus what is written on a survey or scale or written in HR data this is just representation. The real situation is happening in a very dynamic and complex situation. Even something as simple as turnover. You could measure your workplace safety thing and you say that, yeah, because it's high risk, that's why it's turnover, but that's just taking one angle of a picture and assuming that represents the whole person. It doesn't. So the best practice, look at the real situation, ask yourself, what information do I need to best understand the reality of what this situation is? Maybe a scale of the market can help me understand it. Maybe I really need to go down to the ground and ask direct questions to this group to get an understanding of what these people's perception of this environment really is about. It might be an open interview. Okay.
Right. So it depends on what we aim to do with the company, and also depends on the company condition at the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So another question from Miss Fitri.
Wait, pause. There was one before that. I don't want to miss it as we keep going down. Let me just address this. How might the inclusion of psychological insights in safety training alter employees' risk perception and desensitize them to genuine threats? I'm not so sure what you mean by inclusion of psychological insights and affecting risk perception, because that's very, 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 very broad, depending on what insights you mean. Okay. Let me just talk about safety training and desensitization. Now, first things first, you have to remember, let me go back to system 1 and system 2. What is safety training? I'm giving you information and knowledge about what to do. In a safe setting, inside a classroom, maybe mock up in the workplace, but ultimately, what's the situation there? Low risk, controlled, normal, not volatile. Now, will it desensitize? Anything will desensitize, right? Anything will desensitize. As I'm doing the job 20 years, I get desensitized. As I go to the same place every single day, do the same pass, I get desensitized because my attention drops. I'm not looking out for things because I don't expect things to happen, right? Genuine threats happen because you're not paying attention. So how do I address genuine threats? Don't worry about whether the people have been trained or whether recognize it. The whole point of training, of removing threats, is that even when people are not paying attention, bad things don't happen, right? So yes, I can train you to, you have to flip this switch before you turn that dial and so on and so forth. Yes, but can I trust that you remember it after working a 10-hour shift with somebody calling your name at the background? I can't control for that in any training. Are you being complacent? Maybe, maybe not. But can I design a way that if pushing the wrong button is going to cause the damn thing to explode, can I create a system where even if you're not looking and all that, you cannot accidentally press the wrong button? I think that's a safer approach. Like I said, design systems around human fallibility. Never place your full trust on people will do the right thing at the right time. Because 99.9% of the time there will always be a chance where they may slip unintentionally, and you don't want that. Okay, now let's go to Fitri's question.
Okay, Fitra's question.
Yes.
Recent time mental issues in the workplace, like bullying, lack of inclusivity, have increasingly emerged as challenge. This factor often affect workers' well-being and, in some cases, drive them to resign. In your view, could a high turnover rate within an organization be identified as occupational safety and health risk, as it may indicate underlying issues within the management system? And how can we solve this?
Tough lah. Because here's the thing, see, you take care of occupational safety and health, but you are one aspect of the overall climate. Your safety could be tip-top. You could have designed all the best measures to ensure that, risk measures are being taken, people are in optimal state when they're performing their jobs, right? All the checklists are in place, all the tools are given, but unfortunately, in their workplace, other things are present, right? You could have a very toxic leader. You could have a bunch of people who, I don't know, who are just not very nice to work with, and that very specific social dimension is just cracked, and then that causes people to keep leaving the job, right? But that's out of your control because it's not an occupational safety and health issue, right? It is, like you said, an underlying management issue. Could you have authority to influence it? I don't know. It's the same as, does that department head, does my HR person who has to deal with all the turnovers, can they have an impact on management? Yes and no. We're all part of the environment. I think if we recognize issues, we can raise it, but will it change the entire picture? It really depends on what the situation is and who's in charge, right? And how much does it take before they realize that there's something inherently wrong in the way they are taking care of their people, right? Bullying, inclusivity issues, turnover is too big a picture above and beyond OSH. So I think let's learn to pick our fights a little bit, right? Because ultimately the area that we're in control is designing for safety and health. And I know for safety and health, I think sometimes it does talk about mental well-being as part of it. I do get that, but we have to understand that the work environment, everything that's related to the employee experience, from the way they're hired, the way they're being promoted, the way the work is being assigned and appraised, is a lot above and beyond OSH. And when it comes to OSH, specifically from a mental health perspective, I do get the impression a lot of times we are treated like an extracurricular activity. We are a side dish, right? You're just there to just pamper them a little bit, or give them a little bit of counseling if something goes wrong, or arrange a little bit of welfare just to keep them happy, without the management realizing that all this is inconsequential if the fundamental work environment is not conducive. I can't keep giving you candy and pampering you if the fundamental work environment is flawed and damaging. There's only that much remedial work I can do. People will still leave, right? No matter how much free lunches you give or how much, company soccer games you organize, fundamentally, people are there for work. And if the work environment does not suit their needs, no amount of these petty welfare is going to help. So, and yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it is beyond our call as people in charge of site projects. The core business, the way it's being run, the way people are being hired and treated, may sometimes be out of our hands. So likewise, as a professional dealing in this area, even sometimes when I talk to management, sometimes it's things like I can't even get them to change. So sorry, got no model answers for you there. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tay, for sharing such insightful perspective on psychology-based approach to occupational safety and health systems. And we would like to take a moment to celebrate this insight and expertise shared by our distinguished speaker. And it is now our pleasure to present them with their certificates of contribution as official speakers of the Iosh Summit 2025. The committee, please get ready for the certificate. And we present this certificate as a gesture of gratitude for your commitment and fostering occupational safety and health through integrating psychology for the implementation of the occupational safety and health management system. And we proudly present to Mr. Tay Bang Huan as a speaker of Iosh Summit 2025 webinar speakers. And now we will capture the moment. And 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. And for all the participants, let's capture this moment with Mr. Tay, and you can turn on your camera. And the committee, please get ready for the capture. All right, and 3, 2, 1. Okay, another slide. And 3, 2, 1. Another slide. And 3, 2, 1. All right.
Right.
Okay. Once again, let us give
Yeah.
our speaker, Mr. Tebik, a round of virtual applause. And
Thank you.
we sincerely appreciate your time, effort, and passion in this promoting and sharing knowledge of psychological factor in the workplace. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
And see you another event.
Bye.
And all right, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard powerful message today from understanding the role of human behavior to fostering leadership root in psychological safety and creating workplace system that truly care for people's well-being. And to summarize, if there is one thing we can take away from this discussion is that safety and health culture begins with people. How we think, feel, communicate, and lead. Policies and procedures are vital, but the human elements, our mindset, empathy, and shared responsibility is what truly sustains a culture of safety. On behalf of the organizing committee, we sincerely thank you for our panelists, Mr. Shamsul Arifin, for highlighting the role of human behavior in building a safety culture, Dr. Azizan for emphasizing the influence of mental health in creating a holistic safety culture, and Mr. Tay for sharing integrating psychology into the implementation of safety, occupational safety and health management system. And your contribution have truly deepened our understanding of psychology-based safety and health practice. And to our participant joining from Indonesia or Asia, thank you for your engagement and thought-provoking questions. We hope today's session inspires you to bring these insights back to your own organization or workplace. And with that, we officially conclude our panel discussion for the International Occupational Safety and Health Summit 2025. And once again, thank you to everyone for being part of this inspiring exchange. Let's continue to work together in building a psychology-based safety and health culture in every industry. And I will hand the program back to our Master of Ceremonies, and who will guide us through the next segment of the Iosh Summit 2025. I'm Jihan Faradisa, your moderator today. Thank you and see you next time.
Simbol Sastra,
Bank DKI,
PT Kuak Internasional,
World Safety Organization Indonesia,
and Lazis Jateng.
and the media partners for this event are
APIO, Asosiasi Psikologi Industri dan Organisasi,
IZT Magazine,
Forum Mahasiswa K3 Nasional,
and World Safety Organization Indonesia. Alright, I think we've been waiting for our next agenda. I can see that all of the participants are excited. Of course, this is time for announcement of the winners. Who's excited? Let me know by sending message in the chat box below.
Hello everyone. For a brief information, this essay competition, infographic, and creative video competition in 2025 Iosh Summit theme is Building a Psychology, Best Safety and Health Culture in Industry.
Wow, what a challenging and effective theme we have. I surely believe everyone already did the best for composing the best essay, infographic, and creative video for this theme. To all members winners, to all team members winners, please come forward after the team name is mentioned. So, without further ado, let us begin.
Alright. For the first competition announcement, it will be for the 2025 Iosh Summit essay competition. This competition has three winners, and the third winner is
Pasti kayak
Yuk, yang di sana. Kamu lagi di sana. Yang mati. Iya.
Keren sih.
Sing bagian.
Iya lagi.
Coba keren banget sih.
Dan perubahan yang biasa. Saya prediksi dampak ya.
tiba-tiba mati loh. Nggak ada baterai. Jadi tancap. Berarti kafe ya? Baik, juara pertama dia. Ya, pertama. Bracket bala.
Otomatis itu.
Oh gitu.
Ini dulu mas. Oke.
Sama diri.
Cilah
Oh iya.
Biru karena dapat ini.
Inspirasi.
Tapi ini kayak bingung pak.
Ya.
Harusnya pakai baterai ya.
Dua. Video berapa? Yui pinjam betul nggak sih?
In this competition, we have a total of 3 winners. For the third winner, congratulations to Coleman K.
Gila, kandangnya bener nih ada segini.
Iya. Riset di sini ada. Bentar. Saya otomatis masuk bentar. Aktifnya matiin. Udah. Aktifnya matiin. Tinggal.
Iya,